The harsh wind howled like a wounded animal as Josephine Hayes stumbled up the porch steps of the last house on the edge of Dry Creek, her knuckles bloody from knocking on too many unanswered doors. The Montana Territory in 1876 was unforgiving to a woman alone, especially one with a baby strapped to her chest and no husband to speak of. The tiny mining town had turned her away at every threshold: the banker, the shopkeeper, even the church. As the snowstorm intensified, whipping her thin shawl around her trembling shoulders, Josephine raised her fist to the weathered door of the isolated cabin. This was her final hope before the bitter cold claimed them both. "Please," she whispered, her voice carried away by the wind as she knocked. Nothing. She knocked again, harder this time, desperate. The door swung open suddenly, revealing a tall man with wary blue eyes. A rifle hung loosely in his left hand, but it wasn't aimed at her. His face was partially obscured by a beard, but she could see the surprise in his expression as he took in her bedraggled appearance and the small bundle against her chest. "Help us," Josephine pleaded, her knees buckling. "Everyone else turned us away." The man hesitated only a moment before stepping back. "Get inside," he said gruffly, glancing past her at the worsening storm. "Quick, before you freeze to death." Noah Cooper had lived alone for 3 years in the foothills outside Dry Creek, and he preferred it that way. After returning from the war, he'd wanted nothing more than solitude and the company of his horses. Yet here he was, ushering a half-frozen woman and her infant into his humble cabin. "Sit by the fire," he instructed, closing the door against the howling wind. "I'll fetch another blanket." Josephine sank gratefully onto a wooden chair near the crackling hearth, carefully unwrapping her baby from the layers of thin blankets. The infant whimpered softly, and she hushed him tenderly. "How old?" Noah asked, returning with a worn but clean woolen blanket. 6 months, Josephine answered, accepting the blanket with trembling fingers. "His name is William." Noah nodded, moving to the small stove where a pot of stew simmered. "When did you last eat, madam?" "Yesterday morning," she admitted. "And please call me Josephine. Josephine Hayes." "Noah Cooper," he replied, ladling stew into a bowl. "Eat this. It's venison and potato. Nothing fancy, but it's hot." As Josephine ate hungrily, Noah sat across from her, his eyes occasionally drifting to the baby who had fallen asleep in his mother's arms. "Your husband?" he asked finally. Josephine's spoon stilled. "Buried him 3 weeks ago. Fever took him quick. We were heading to Oregon to start fresh when." Her voice broke. Noah nodded, understanding in his eyes. He knew loss intimately. "The storm's bad. You'll stay here tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure things out." "The town wouldn't help us," she said softly. "Not even the preacher." Noah's jaw tightened. Dry Creek's not known for Christian charity. They don't take kindly to strangers. "And you do?" she asked, a hint of wariness in her tired eyes. "I was a stranger once too," he said simply. "Finish your stew." That night, Noah gave Josephine his bed, taking the floor near the hearth for himself. As he lay awake, listening to the soft breathing of the woman and child, he wondered what had possessed him to let them in. 3 years of solitude shattered by a knock on his door. Morning brought clear skies but bitter cold. Noah rose early, tending to his horses before returning to find Josephine already awake, attempting to prepare breakfast with what little she could find. "You didn't have to do that," he said, removing his hat as he entered. "It's the least I can do," she replied. "We'll be on our way after we eat. I don't want to impose." Noah frowned, looking out the window at the snow-covered landscape. "And go where exactly?" "Next town's 30 miles. You won't make it halfway before nightfall." Josephine bit her lip, bouncing William gently as he fussed. I can't stay here indefinitely, Mr. Cooper. Noah, he corrected. And you can stay until the trail's clear. Could be a week. Could be longer. Why would you do that for strangers? She asked. Noah busied himself stoking the fire. Because no one did it for me when I needed it. He straightened up, turning to face her. Besides, I've got the room and enough supplies. Josephine's eyes filled with tears. She quickly blinked away. Thank you. The days that followed fell into an unexpected rhythm. Noah would tend to his horses and chop wood, while Josephine kept the cabin tidy and prepared meals. William, for his part, seemed content in the warm cabin, cooing and reaching for Noah's beard whenever the man came close enough. He likes you, Josephine observed one evening as Noah reluctantly allowed the baby to grab his finger. Babies aren't particular, Noah replied, but there was a softness to his voice that hadn't been there before. Were you married before? Do you have children? Josephine asked, then immediately regretted her boldness. I'm sorry, that's not my business. Noah was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Was engaged once. Before the war. He stared into the fire. Came back different. She married someone else. Josephine nodded, understanding in her eyes. The war changes men. My father never came back from it at all, though he lived another 10 years. On the 5th day, as a tentative sun melted some of the snow, Noah brought in a small wooden crate. Made this last night after you went to sleep, he said, setting it beside the bed. For the boy. Better than having him sleep with you where you might roll over. Josephine ran her hand over the simple cradle, touched by the unexpected gesture. You didn't have to do this. Wasn't sleeping anyway, he mumbled, clearly uncomfortable with her gratitude. That night, after placing William in his new cradle, Josephine found Noah on the porch, smoking a pipe and staring at the stars. May I join you? She asked. He nodded, shifting to make room on the bench. Why did you settle here so far from town? She asked after a comfortable silence. Noah exhaled a plume of smoke. After the war, couldn't stand being around people much. Too much noise. Too many questions. Out here it's quiet. Just me and the mountains. And now us, Josephine added softly. He glanced at her. Yes, now you. My husband, Thomas, he wanted to farm in Oregon, she said. Had big dreams of apple orchards and wheat fields. I think he would have been good at it. What did you want? Noah asked. The question startled her. No one had asked that before. I wanted. She paused, considering. Safety. A home that wouldn't be taken away. Somewhere William could grow up without hunger or fear. Noah nodded, tapping his pipe against the railing. Reasonable dreams. The next morning, Josephine woke to find Noah gone. A note on the table saying he'd ridden to town for supplies. She spent the day washing clothes and wondering why the thought of eventually leaving this cabin filled her with such dread. Noah returned late afternoon, his horse laden with sacks of flour, sugar, coffee, and to her surprise a small cloth doll. For the boy, he said gruffly, handing it to her. When he's older. Josephine accepted the simple toy, throat tight with emotion. That's very thoughtful. How's he doing with solid food? Noah asked, changing the subject as he unloaded the supplies. He's starting to take a little. I mashed some of your potatoes yesterday. Noah nodded. Got some dried apples. Could soften those up for him. The casual way he included William in his planning didn't escape her notice. That evening, as they sat by the fire, Josephine asked the question that had been weighing on her mind. How long can we really stay, Noah? The snow's melting. Noah was quiet for a moment. Stay as long as you need. Winter's not done with us yet. I can't keep imposing on your hospitality without giving something in return, she insisted. You cook. You clean. That's more than fair, he replied. I have a little money saved, she said hesitantly. Not much, but keep your money, he interrupted, a flash of annoyance crossing his face. I don't need it. Josephine bit her lip, unsure why she'd offended him. I'm sorry, I just meant… I know what you meant, he said, his voice softer now. But you need that money more than I do. For the boy. Later that night, after Josephine had gone to bed, Noah sat alone, contemplating how quickly his solitary existence had been disrupted. The strange thing was, he didn't mind it nearly as much as he should have. 2 weeks passed, and the trails became passable again. The inevitable conversation loomed between them, unspoken but present in every shared glance. One afternoon, while Noah was mending a fence near the barn, Josephine approached, William bundled against her chest. I've been thinking, she began, about what comes next. Noah hammered a nail with more force than necessary. Oregon, wasn't it? That was Thomas's dream, not mine, she said quietly. Noah paused, finally looking at her. What's your dream then, Josephine? I don't know anymore, she admitted. But I do know I can't keep living off your charity. It's not charity, he said sharply. Then what is it? The question hung between them, unanswered, as William began to fuss. Josephine bounced him gently, soothing his cries. I could work, she suggested. In town maybe. Find a place for us. Noah's jaw tightened. Town's not a good place for a woman alone. Those people turned you away in a blizzard. Remember? Then what do you suggest? She asked, frustration edging into her voice. Noah set down his hammer. Stay. The single word hung in the air between them. Stay, he repeated. Help with the horses. I've been thinking of breeding them, could use the help. Cabin's small, but we could add on. Room for the boy to grow. Josephine stared at him, trying to understand the offer. As your hired help. Noah met her gaze directly. As whatever you want it to be. No obligations. No expectations. Just an offer of a place to stay, work to do, food on the table. Why? She whispered. Because the cabin's been quiet too long, he said simply. And you make good coffee. A small smile touched her lips despite herself. That's all it takes? Good coffee? It's a start, he replied, the ghost of a smile on his own face. That evening, they sat on the porch as had become their custom, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and crimson. I'll stay through spring, Josephine decided. Help with the foaling season you mentioned. After that, we'll see. Noah nodded, satisfaction evident in his relaxed shoulders. Fair enough. Spring arrived gradually, the snow retreating up the mountainsides, revealing tender green shoots beneath. Noah's 3 maras were heavy with foals, keeping them both busy with preparations. William grew stronger daily, now sitting up and babbling constantly. One warm afternoon, as Josephine hung laundry while William played on a blanket nearby, she heard a rider approaching. Instinctively, she scooped up her son, backing toward the cabin door. The stranger tipped his hat as he dismounted. Afternoon, madam. Looking for Noah Cooper. He's in the barn, she replied cautiously. May I tell him who's calling? Sheriff Donovan from Dry Creek, the man said, eyeing her curiously. Don't believe I've seen you before. Before she could respond, Noah emerged from the barn, wiping his hands on a rag. His posture changed subtly when he spotted the sheriff, becoming more guarded. Sheriff, he acknowledged. What brings you out this way? Got a situation in town, Donovan explained. Stagecoach robbery yesterday. Driver identified one of the men as Jack Harmon. Thought you might know something, being as you rode with him during the war. Josephine watched Noah's face harden. Haven't seen Jack in 3 years. Don't expect to. The sheriff's eyes drifted to Josephine and William. Didn't know you had a family, Cooper. Now you do, Noah replied evenly. Anything else? After the sheriff departed, an uncomfortable silence fell between them. Josephine waited, sensing there was something Noah wasn't telling her. Jack Harmon was my lieutenant, he finally said as they sat at the dinner table that evening. Not a good man, even before the war twisted him further. The sheriff thinks you might be involved, she observed. Noah's hand tightened around his fork. Towns always thought the worst of me. One of the reasons I keep to myself. Why? She asked gently. Noah sighed, setting down his utensils. Came back from the war damaged. Drinking too much. Got in some fights. Made mistakes. He met her eyes. Nothing I'm proud of, but nothing like robbery either. Josephine reached across the table, briefly touching his hand. I believe you. The simple declaration seemed to surprise him. You do. I've lived in your home for nearly 2 months, Noah. I know what kind of man you are. Something shifted in his expression then, a softening around the eyes that made her heart beat faster. The first foal arrived on a crisp April morning, the mare's labored whinnies waking them before dawn. They worked together in the barn, Noah guiding the foal into the world while Josephine kept the mare calm. When the spindly-legged colt finally stood, nursing from its mother on wobbling legs, they exchanged a look of shared accomplishment. Beautiful, isn't he? Noah said, watching the newborn with undisguised pride. Perfect? Josephine agreed, suddenly aware of how close they were standing, shoulders almost touching in the dim lantern light. Noah turned to her, something unspoken in his eyes. For a moment, she thought he might reach for her, but William's cry from the cabin broke the spell. I should check on him, she murmured, stepping back. Noah nodded, returning his attention to the mare and foal. I'll stay here a while longer. As spring deepened into early summer, the promised addition to the cabin took shape. Noah proved skilled with tools, and the small room that would belong to William began to emerge. Josephine sewed curtains from fabric Noah brought from town, and together they crafted a life neither had expected. Yet something remained unspoken between them, a tension that grew with each passing day. Josephine found herself watching Noah when he wasn't looking the way his hands moved competently over the horse's flanks, how his rare smile transformed his face. On a warm June evening, as they sat on the porch watching fireflies dance over the meadow, William asleep inside, Noah finally broke the silence. Your year's almost up, he said quietly. Josephine looked at him, confused. What year? You said you'd stay through spring, to help with the foaling. His voice was carefully neutral. Spring's nearly over. Oh, she hadn't been counting the days, hadn't thought about leaving in weeks. I suppose it is. The last mare should foal any day now, he continued, staring out at the darkening landscape. Are you asking me to leave? She asked hesitantly. No. His response was immediate. I'm asking if you want to. Josephine took a deep breath. I don't. Noah turned to her then, his expression cautious but hopeful. Why not? Because this feels like home, she admitted. For William. For me. The silence that followed was electric with possibility. I never expected this, Noah said finally. When I opened that door in the blizzard, I thought you'd be gone in a day or two. And yet here we are, she said softly. Noah reached for her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against hers. Here we are. The touch of his hand sent warmth spreading through her chest. How long had she been waiting for this moment? How long had they both been circling this unspoken thing between them? Noah, she began, but was interrupted by a distant rumble of hooves. Noah was on his feet instantly, his hand going to the gun at his hip that she'd never seen him use. "Get inside," he ordered, his voice hard. "What is it?" she asked, already moving toward the door. "Riders. Coming fast. At night." His expression was grim. "Nothing good." Inside the cabin, Josephine hastily checked on William, still sleeping soundly, then peered through the window. 3 men on horseback approached, their faces obscured in the gathering darkness. Noah stood on the porch, rifle now in hand. "That's far enough," he called as the riders slowed. "Cooper," one of them shouted. "Just want to talk." Josephine recognized the voice with a chill. "Jack Harmon." "Nothing to talk about, Jack," Noah replied evenly. "Keep riding." "Heard you've got a woman now," Harmon called. "Pretty widow, they say. And a baby, too." Josephine's blood ran cold at the mention of herself and William. "My business is my own," Noah answered. "State yours or move on." "Need a place to lie low," Harmon said. "For old time's sake." "Can't help you." There was a tense silence, broken only by the stamping of horses' hooves. "Don't be like that, Cooper," Harmon said, his voice hardening. "We're brothers in arms." "We're nothing to each other," Noah replied. "Now ride on before this gets ugly." One of the other men muttered something Josephine couldn't hear, and Harmon laughed an unpleasant sound that made her skin crawl. "Maybe we'll just come in anyway," Harmon suggested. "Meet this widow of yours." Noah raised his rifle. "You won't set foot on my property." The threat hung in the air, taut as a bowstring. "You always were stubborn," Harmon spat. "We'll remember this, Cooper." After a moment, the riders turned and galloped away, leaving a cloud of dust in their wake. Noah remained on the porch long after they'd gone, keeping watch. When he finally came inside, his face was drawn with worry. "They'll be back," he said grimly, checking that the door was securely bolted. "Who was that man?" "Really?" Josephine asked. Noah sank into a chair, suddenly looking exhausted. "Jack Harmon was my lieutenant, like I said, but he was also the reason I left my old life behind." He rubbed a hand over his face. "After the war, we rode together for a while. I was lost, angry. He suggested we rob a bank in Kansas." Josephine sat across from him, listening intently. "I refused, tried to talk him out of it. He did it anyway." Noah's eyes were distant with memory. 2 people died. I testified against him, but he escaped before the trial. Been running ever since. "And now he's found you," she said softly. Noah nodded, his gaze finding hers. "Found us. He knows about you and William now." The implication hung heavily between them. "What do we do?" she asked. "I'll ride to town tomorrow. Talk to the sheriff." Noah's jaw tightened. "But tonight I'll keep watch." "I'm not afraid," Josephine told him, reaching for his hand across the table. "You should be," he replied, but his fingers interlaced with hers. "But I won't let anything happen to you or William. I promise you that." Noah rode to Dry Creek at first light, leaving Josephine with his rifle and strict instructions to bolt the door behind him. The town that had once turned her away now held their best hope for protection. While he was gone, Josephine went about her chores mechanically, checking on William frequently and jumping at every sound. By late afternoon, her nerves were frayed to breaking point. When she finally heard a horse approaching, she peered cautiously through the window, relief flooding through her at the sight of Noah's familiar figure. But her relief turned to concern when she saw the grim set of his mouth as he dismounted. "Sheriff's gathered a posse," he explained after she let him in. "They're searching the hills to the north. But it could be days before they find anything." "And if Harmon returns before then?" she asked. Noah's expression hardened. Then I'll deal with him myself." That night, after William was asleep, they sat together on the porch, the warm summer air heavy with the scent of pine and the weight of unspoken fear. "I'm sorry I brought this trouble to your door," Noah said quietly. Josephine turned to him in surprise. "You? I'm the one who knocked on your door in the middle of a blizzard." "Best knock I ever answered," he replied, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly. The simple statement made her heart flutter. Even with all this? Even so, Noah's eyes met hers in the lantern light. "Josephine, if something happens—" "Don't," she interrupted. "Nothing will happen." "If it does," he persisted, "I want you to know that these past months have been—" He struggled for words. "I never thought I'd find peace again after the war. Never thought I'd find—" "Find what?" she whispered when he faltered. Instead of answering, Noah leaned forward, his hand gently cupping her cheek. The touch was so tender it nearly undid her. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he brought his lips to hers. The kiss was hesitant at first, then deepened as Josephine responded, her hand coming up to rest against his chest, feeling his heartbeat quicken beneath her palm. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Noah rested his forehead against hers. "That," he murmured, "never thought I'd find that again." 2 days passed without incident, the tension gradually easing as they went about their daily tasks. William took his first tentative steps, toddling from Josephine to Noah with delighted squeals that filled the cabin with laughter. On the third evening, as they prepared for dinner, the sound of approaching riders shattered their fragile peace. "Get William," Noah ordered, reaching for his rifle. "Hide in the root cellar." "Noah, now, Josephine," he insisted, his voice leaving no room for argument. She gathered William, who protested at being disturbed from his play, and hurried to the trapdoor in the kitchen floor. The small space beneath was dark and cool, used for storing potatoes and preserves. "I'll come for you when it's safe," Noah promised, helping her down the rough-hewn steps. "Be careful," she pleaded, clutching William to her chest. The last thing she saw before Noah closed the trapdoor was his face, determined and fierce, silhouetted against the lamplight. From her hiding place, Josephine could hear muffled voices, then the unmistakable sound of gunshots. William began to cry, and she hushed him desperately, heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. More gunshots. A crash. Then silence. The silence was worse than the noise, stretching endlessly as Josephine strained to hear any sign of what was happening above. William, sensing her fear, whimpered against her shoulder. After what seemed like hours but was probably only minutes, the trapdoor opened, sending dirt cascading down onto them. Josephine pressed herself against the earthen wall, shielding William with her body. "Josephine," Noah's voice, strained but alive. "It's over." She climbed out on shaking legs to find Noah standing in the kitchen, blood seeping from a gash on his arm but otherwise unharmed. Through the open door, she could see 3 men lying motionless in the yard. "The sheriff's posse arrived just in time," Noah explained, wincing as he tried to stem the bleeding with a cloth. "Harmon and his men thought they'd caught me alone." Relief made her dizzy. "You're hurt." "It's nothing," he dismissed, though his face was pale. "Just a graze." Josephine set William down in his crate of toys and quickly tore a clean strip from her apron to bind Noah's wound. "This needs stitches." "Later," he said, his eyes never leaving her face. "Are you all right? Both of you?" "We're fine," she assured him, tying off the makeshift bandage. "Thanks to you." Outside, men from town were loading the bodies onto horses. Sheriff Donovan appeared in the doorway, hat in hand. "Cooper," he acknowledged, then nodded to Josephine. "Madam." Sorry about the mess. We'll clear out soon. Thank you, Sheriff, Noah replied, for getting here when you did. Donovan shifted uncomfortably. Least I could do. Been wrong about you, Cooper. Town's been wrong. He cleared his throat. Anyway, you folks take care now. After the sheriff and his men departed, taking the bodies with them, an exhausted silence fell over the cabin. William, oblivious to the danger they'd been in, played contentedly with his wooden blocks. I need to check on the horses, Noah said finally. Make sure the gunfire didn't spook them too badly. Let me stitch that arm first, Josephine insisted. He submitted to her ministrations, sitting at the table as she carefully cleaned and stitched the wound. Her hands were steady despite the emotional turmoil of the day. You're good at that, he observed. Had practice, she replied. My husband was always hurting himself on the farm. Noah was quiet for a moment. You loved him very much. It wasn't quite a question, but Josephine answered anyway. I did. He was a good man. She tied off the last stitch. But he's gone now. And you're here, Noah said softly. I'm here, she agreed, her eyes meeting his. With you. Later that night, after William was asleep and the cabin was put back in order, they sat together on the edge of the bed, their bed now, by unspoken agreement. I thought I might lose you today, Noah admitted, his voice rough with emotion. Both of you. Josephine took his hand. But you didn't. We're safe now. Safe, he repeated, as if testing the word. Been a long time since I felt that. And now? She asked. Now I want to build something that lasts, he said simply. With you. If you'll have me. Josephine's heart swelled. Is that a proposal, Noah Cooper? A slow smile spread across his face, transforming it. I suppose it is. Not very romantic, after everything that's happened today. I don't need romance, she told him, moving closer. I just need you. Noah's good arm circled her waist, drawing her against him. You have me, for as long as you want. Forever, then, she whispered against his lips. Their second kiss was different from the first, deeper. Sure. A promise sealed between them as the summer night enveloped the small cabin that had become their sanctuary. Fall arrived in a blaze of gold and crimson, the aspens on the mountainsides shimmering in the clear air. Noah and Josephine were married by a traveling preacher who stopped at their cabin on his circuit, William toddling between them during the simple ceremony. The small room Noah had built for William was now complete, and they'd begun planning a larger addition for the following spring. The foals born that year were thriving, the beginning of what Noah hoped would become a prosperous breeding operation. On a crisp October evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains in fiery hues, William sleeping peacefully inside, Josephine rested her head on Noah's shoulder. Happy? He asked, his arm around her waist. Completely, she replied. Though I sometimes think about that night in the blizzard. What if you hadn't opened your door? Noah's arm tightened around her. I almost didn't, he admitted. Was ready to ignore the knocking, figuring it was trouble. What changed your mind? He considered the question. Something in the sound. Desperation, maybe, or fate. He kissed the top of her head. Best decision I ever made, opening that door. As darkness settled over the valley, they remained on the porch, two souls who had found each other against all odds, building a life together in the shadow of the mountains. The widow who had knocked on every door until she found the one that would open to her future, and the cowboy who had opened not just his door, but his heart. I love you, Noah whispered into the gathering night. And I love you, Josephine replied, her hand finding his. Always.